My next adventure is modeling glass. My fusing buddy Donna recommended it instead of freeze and fuse, saying that it was easier and turned out better. And I've seen a few of her pieces, and indeed it's absolutely gorgeous. And I've been putting it off, and then out of the blue she surprised me with a modeling glass kit. So I guess the excuses are over and it's time to get started. So in order to make this, I need 1 tablespoon of glass powder. There's 1 tablespoon of glass powder. Now I'm doing the smallest batch possible. So I need now a 1/4 teaspoon of this binder powder. And I definitely need to take these spoons apart because this is a pain in the neck using them all connected. This has to be stirred together really well. Now I need to add 1.5 teaspoons of water. I have to stir until this turns into a lumpy ball. Oh, wow. It binds really quickly. It has to be a ball with a few crumbs. So just stir it in really well. Oops. I need a bigger container for mixing. Okay, it's not really a ball yet, but it's close. And then you need to add 1/8 teaspoon of this liquid medium. I don't know if I need to move quicker, but I do want to cap everything so in case it gets knocked over. And after you've got that all mixed, you need to knead it together. Ooh, that's an interesting texture. I can see that I didn't mix it completely. So next time I'll have to be more careful. And it should not stick to your fingers if it's the right consistency. So this feels a little damp. It's almost like Play-Doh that's a little bit wet. But the more you work it, the better it gets. He said if it's too dry, you can brush some more water on it. But that's not my problem. If it's a little too wet, you can let it sit a little bit. So maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll let it sit just a touch. When you let it sit a bit, it starts to feel a whole lot more like Play-Doh. It gets less sticky. But it seems like if I continue to mess with it, I'm going to end up drying it out too much. So let's see if I have anything that I could make in brown to give this stuff a try. I'm going to try the deer, which gave me such a hard time when I was using freeze and fuse. Oh, I don't know how you're going to deal with, I don't know how to deal with air bubbles. I don't know if this is going to work, but we're going to try. All right. So I'm not going to be able to do the tap, tap, tap or the vibrate to get air bubbles out. So I don't know how that's going to work. And I'm just forcing the clay into the parts of the mold. And then I'm not sure how to get it out. Maybe you let it dry for a little bit. Don't know. I don't want to get it into the, oh, this though, that's right. I don't have to be as careful because if I accidentally get it into the antler, when it dries, I can just sand it. On this area where I've gone over into the antler, I'm just not going to worry about it. Interesting substance, especially after doing freeze and fuse for so, I'm going to try to save the extra so I don't waste it. Okay, I need to stop playing with it and just give it a chance to dry a little bit. Okay, next I'm going to try a leaf with the green that's a little bit too soft. But we'll try it anyway. Noticing you really should wash your hands between them because my leaf is going to have little bits of brown in it. That's okay, doesn't matter. I really want to work it in there. I'm just concerned about possibly getting air bubbles in there because the next step for the freeze and fuse would be to tap, 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 and the air bubbles would work their way out. And I don't see that working the same way with this stuff. So I guess you just have to push it, push it, push it. So I'm just going to leave them to dry a little bit and then see if I can pop them out. And you'll notice I never stop playing with things, which I have to learn to do. Just leave it alone. When you've got it this sort of pasty texture, you can really force it into the mold. So I'm guessing that's how I'm going to prevent air bubbles. Just really push it in there. I don't know. Interesting. Very interesting stuff. We'll see how it turns out. Okay, these sat for a little bit. So I'm going to see if I can get them out. A little bit, still a little bit too soft, I think. Oh, look at how pretty that is. Then you're supposed to let it sit and completely air dry before you put it in the kiln. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do for Mother's Day. I have two projects in mind. One of them needs sort of big, flashy flowers, and one of them needs much smaller, more delicate flowers. So that's what I'm going to work on today, these more delicate flowers. And I need flowers representing the birth months of my siblings. I have the molds. The only one I don't have is the mold for the Lily of the Valley, but that's on its way. The colors I'm using are marigold yellow, Kelly green with a little bit of olive mixed because I didn't have enough Kelly green to make up the tablespoon. I have white, violet, and orange. In these containers right now, I have a tablespoon of the glass powder and 1/4 teaspoon of the binder. And the next, I have to add 1.5 teaspoons of water to each, and then 1/8 of a teaspoon of the liquid medium. I'm going to do them one at a time so that it works correctly. I think if I were to just dump everything in at one time, I don't know if that would be a good idea. So I'm going to make one powder at a time. I'm going to store them in these little plastic containers. Anything that I don't use, I'm then going to put all these in a plastic bag and vacuum seal them because you really want it to be airtight if you're trying to store it. I stored some overnight that I was playing with in a container that's not airtight, and it's still workable, but it's dried out a lot, and I would have to add water to really use that. I need 1.5 teaspoons of water, and I'm not going to pour over the container because if it spills, you want it to spill somewhere other than into the container. Okay. I need to mix this up until it's crumbly. As that binder starts to work into the glass. It works in pretty quickly and gets this sort of odd texture. And after you've got sort of this crumbly sticking together, then you're going to add the liquid binder or the liquid medium. And that's going to be 1/8 of a teaspoon. Again, I'm going to do this over the silicone mat. So if I should spill it, I'm not going to spill it into the powder that I've started mixing. And then you want to mix that in really well. And once it's all mixed in really well, then you're going to knead it. It should be the texture of like Play-Doh. I don't use rubber gloves. It says everything in the kit is non-toxic. I don't plan to eat it, obviously, but I don't think it's a problem for my hands. And it shouldn't really stick to your hands. This is a little sticky, and if it is a little sticky, you can just leave it out a little bit to dry. But I think for shoving it into the molds, this texture is actually good. And then I'm going to take off a little pinch. Or use the popsicle stick. I found that worked really well. Take a little pinch and really push it into the mold. When you're using freeze and fuse, you then would tap the mold or vibrate the mold to get air bubbles out. I think if you just really push this in pretty hard, you're going to eliminate air bubbles. And this great mold I found actually has a representation of a violet and little violet leaves. And then after it's in here, you put it in the toaster oven at 200 degrees. And they're saying about an hour. I'm going to try about 20 minutes and check it, and then 20 minutes and check it, because I'm making little tiny shapes. So I don't think it's going to take an hour to dry. But there we go. I have an extra. So I'm going to do as many leaves as I can. Next step, I'm going to work on the violets. And then I will work on the chrysanthemum and the marigold and put all of this stuff in the oven to start drying. Before I get into the white and purple, I think I'm going to go wash my hands. There are little bits stuck to my fingers, and I don't want to contaminate the white glass. So I'll be back. My sister's month, October, actually has 2 flowers. It's either cosmos or marigold. So I'm going to make both, and then I'll decide at the end which I like the composition of better. So here's the cosmos. There's the chrysanthemum. These are the marigolds. So I'm going to take little teeny tiny bits of yellow, do the centers of the flowers, and then work on the petals. Okay, these are ready to start drying in the oven. Well, it's been 20 minutes and look at how darling. Little violets. Oops. Little heart-shaped violet leaves. These don't look completely cool. I mean, completely dry. But they're dry enough to unmold. Oh, pretty. Yeah, the bigger ones I should put in a little bit longer, but I'm impatient and I want to see what they look like. And I have to make a bunch of them anyway. Ooh, wow, I like those. Yeah, I definitely need to leave the bigger ones in longer. Look at how pretty. These are not quite dry. They're dry enough to unmold. And I think my first choice for cosmos, I don't actually like as much as my second choice. The marigolds are adorable, so I'm still not sure which one I'm going to do. Violets are beautiful. Alrighty, now I just need to pump out a whole bunch of them. Here are most of the modeling clay components ready to go in the kiln. I need a couple more feathery leaves for the asters, and I need a couple more leaves for the chrysanthemums. I'm going to use that for chrysanthemum leaf. I'm really pleased with the way they turned out. Very delicate, very beautiful, maintained all the detail. So I have to get these washed up and ready. The only thing I'm not 100% thrilled with, and I need to retry, is the dogwood. It didn't fire white, it fired gray. And that was something that they warned in the instructions, that if you don't bring it up to a hot enough temperature, it's not going to fire white. So I'm going to try the dogwoods again at a higher temperature and see if I can get them to maintain this beautiful detail, but turn white. But that's going to wait until after I do the basket weave. I am super pleased with this modeling glass. So much easier than freeze and fuse. And with that firing schedule I used, the texture is amazing. Just absolutely perfect. Look at these little teeny tiny violets. They are just gorgeous. I'm not sure how they're going to tack. I may lose some of this texture. We'll see. I'm working on the layout now, and I had it on white, which looks great, except the Lily of the Valley. You won't be able to see it at all. So I'm probably going to put it on Tecta, but I don't really want it to be clear. I want to have some type of color background. So I'll probably use powders, but I'm not sure yet. And then eventually it's going to be in this frame. The plan for the stems is to write out our names and then have the flowers connected to our names. I'm liking it so far, but I'm hoping the Lily of the Valley comes out. The scale of my mold is really, really off. So I think what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to hand make little Lily of the Valley bells. They're going to be tiny, and it's going to be quite a challenge to get the scale right. Because if you have chrysanthemums this big and violets this big, you can't have massive Lily of the Valley. So these will shrink up. So I'm going to make a little oval, flatten it out, trying to keep it oval shaped. And then with my little scalpel, I'm just going to cut the little sections out to make it look like a little Lily of the Valley bell. So I'm going to make a whole bunch of those and fire them. This might not work at all because they're so tiny. They're going to get about 20% shrinkage. If I do them at the cooler temperature, they're going to be gray, not white. But we'll give it a try because I really need them to be tiny and I really need them to be white. I'm going to make a bunch of them, all different sizes, to see if they'll work. The leaves of my Lily of the Valley were also way too large on that mold, so I'm going to use this mold. I'll make a few of these and see how they work out. So the first schedule I used was this one, and it brought the pieces up to this level. Not super shiny, but a lot of texture. And that highest temperature brought it up to 1275 and hold for 10 minutes. This one wants you to bring it up to 1325 for whiter whites and a glossy surface. But I think that might be too much. So let's take a look at what my freeze and fuse schedule is. My freeze and fuse comes up to a 1284 for the little. So I think I'm going to do a standard freeze and fuse in the Paragon kiln. I just am very concerned at 1325. It's going to turn these little teeny tiny Lily of the Valley bells into mush. So we're gonna use my traditional freeze and fuse schedule. Well, they're not mush, but they're also not white. They turned out really nice glass-wise. Color's still off. The shape of the Lily of the Valley is perfect, but they didn't get white. So I'm going to make another batch and fire them at the higher temperature. I also need to do some more lily of the valley leaves. Oops, I think I like this color better than this color. So we'll see. Okay, these are loaded in the Paragon kiln, and I'm going to use the exact firing schedule recommended by the company that makes the modeling class. Well, I used the suggested firing schedule, and the whites are still gray. The lily of the valley are even more gray. Still struggling a little with the modeling glass. These, which were done at a lower temperature, are beautiful, except for the lily of the valley, which are gray. And so they suggested you fire it at the higher temperature to get them to be white, but it really did not work. The little bells are smaller. They have lost a little bit of their shape, and they're actually grayer at a higher temperature. So I haven't figured out the trick with this modeling glass. The flowers tend to lose their definition. They get very, very soft, where these at a lower temperature really keep their texture. Now this one was fired at a lower temperature, these two, and then I went back to see if bringing them to a higher temperature would make a difference. And then this one was only fired at a higher temperature. The shrinkage is more with starting with a higher temperature, and they do whiten up a little bit, but they're still not white. That would be the white from a first firing, which is a little bit grayer than this, but it's just not. It's not what I need it to be. I also found that the leaves have lost their definition. When you fire it at a lower temperature, the mold has these beautiful veins. But when you bring it up to a higher temperature, you lose them. Again, it is shinier. They're shinier. They're very pretty, but they do lose texture. Okay. Here's the general layout. I may put the names on and fire it and see how it works out, because I do like the idea. And I think my mom will like it. So I put it over the clear. Next is to get the names on there. So I wrote the names in cursive on notebook paper, so then I can trace. I've not used this little metal tip. I've added a little bit of water because this is old paint. Let's see how it goes. I want to hold it at an angle so it doesn't come out too fast. This is dark green paint. There we go. Well, no, I'm not going to be able to bring it up to the stems on all of them. So I think I'll just go that far. A little bit rough, but I think if I go back too much, I'm going to end up making it worse. But of course, I can't leave it alone completely. So I'll get the names on, and then this will go in for a tack fuse. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep it on clear. I may do a double layer clear on top, white on the bottom with a little bit of powder between them. I'll have to see how that goes. That was actually much more challenging than I expected. I used to bake cakes, and so I was accustomed to writing with icing, but this does not behave like icing. Writing is done, and now I'm not going to go back and touch it up and play with it because it just, well, except for making my sister's E look like an E instead of an I, which I don't know if I'm going to be able to do without ruining it. There we go. Okay, I'm gonna leave it alone now because I will just ruin it if I don't stop. First thing I want to take a look at is if I put a little bit of green powder on the bottom and a little bit of blue on top. See how that looks. It shouldn't be too dark. Just a little bit of accent. Because I don't really like it on the clear and I don't really like it on the white. Or possibly just to green across the entire thing. So let's see how the green is. If I do green the whole way. Yes, that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to clean all the glass, sprinkle light green powder between the two pieces, and then put it in for a tack fuse. And then I'll let you see it when it's done. Although it might not be part of this video because I was hoping to get it out on Mother's Day, which is today. So I may fire it and show you tomorrow in a separate video. Here we go. In the kiln, ready for a tack fuse. Okay, we're done. So let's take a quick look. Oh, looks good. So the project is done. I absolutely love modeling glass. Everything got softer and lost a lot of detail in the tack fuse, but is still beautiful. The lily of the valley turned nice bright white. Glass line paints, gorgeous. The names are a little bit crooked, but that wasn't going to get any better no matter how many times I did it. It would have just been crooked in a different way. Thank you so much, Donna. Love it.